Hello and welcome to the third race of the HRL MT Grand Final. This one's going to be on Claystone Club. So this is, of course, a shortened version, as we're going through the starting lineup here, of a classic. It's kind of a classic already, I think we could say, from Opex. We've raced it so many times. In the Hogs, he did a remixed version of Claystone here for it to fit into the pure terrain category. Nate is out, and we are green. It's a 16-lap race. On this one, only hog race of the grand final. Hunter and Slaunch on the front row. And Slaunch gets caught on Hunter, and that is a big first lap incident. Now, that may have looked very, very troll on Slaunch's part from what you first saw. But we're going to take a look at a replay here and analyze this one. And you can see it clearly already. Probably there's a big bump on the inside right here. And so you have to get slowed up like well in advance. And, you know, this is like obviously Slaunch, I'm sure, practiced these tracks before racing in the grand final, but, you know, probably by himself. And that's probably not a line that you're running, practicing this on your own. And, you know, unfortunately, he's on that line for the start of the race when it's double wide and does not get slowed down early enough, catches some air, and gets caught on Hunter midair. So essentially, like, when he gets caught on Hunter midair, there's no he's not controlling his hog. Like, he's not controlling his vehicle. It's over. So taking another look at it here. And again, like, at this point, he's not in control. He's 4 tires in the air. Hunter hits him, which makes it worse because it looked like his tires were about to come down, but they come down so much later. And when they do come down, it's just his front tires. His rear tires, I think, actually never hit the ground until they get to this drop off. Well, after this drop off. So yeah. And I'm not trying to blame Hunter either with the contact. Like, they were just racing at the start. So I was just explaining the situation and what happened. So that really sucked, and Hunter was obviously, you know, I think understandably very frustrated. We take a look at another replay here to see like what happened. So it ends up being Luke and Roman up front. So how did this occur? We're gonna take a look at Roman's POV as they obviously started, you know, many positions behind. So now we're gonna take a look at Detail's POV. This is a better one because he's got the whole view of the field. So one more understanding of this instance, because this is obviously a very important part of the race. Like, this really sets the tone for the race. This is a big early incident, but you can see it even better what happened there and how unfortunate it was. Camby had an opportunity to take the lead, but Camby got super tight as well and actually made contact with Slaunch there. So Camby lost several positions already, and then Luke and Roman were able to keep it clean to the inside and skirt on by, and they both get a very nice start to their races. So yeah, and it ends up being Luke out front, Roman second, and again, that's a huge start for both of them. Luke trying to recover, you know, from the unfortunate ending to last race. Roman trying to keep up what has been a pretty good grand final so far. And I said in the pre-show that I thought, you know, if there was a chance for someone to get like an upset win, I thought the highest opportunity for it was actually on this track. I think, you know, automatically a lot of people would probably go to the terrain oval, which is fair, but just personally, I thought the biggest opportunity for it, oh my god, that was aggressive, was on this track. And so having Roman in second early on is, you know, keep an eye on him to potentially make that happen, especially when he doesn't have a win this season. He's going to want it even more. And this is Hunter and Slaunch battling, and they're surprisingly close to the back of the field after how bad that crash was. And there's just no regard, just fully sending it in on Camby there. I don't think Hunter gave a single fuck at that point. So a little aggressive, maybe a little too aggressive. That being said, like I said before, I do understand the frustration after the first incident, but I do think that after looking at the replay, he'd understand that it was not, you know, anything malicious on Slaunch's part. Like, that was pretty damn unfortunate, and I'm really glad that I wasn't in Slaunch's position on the start, because to tell you the truth, I probably would have done the exact same thing and ended up in the exact same spot. And I think most of the drivers in the field would probably, looking at that, probably agree with that. But yeah, truthfully, if I was in the same position as Slaunch, I think I would have ended up in the exact same spot. I think I would have done the exact same thing, ended up in the exact same spot. And I feel for both of them. Because even, I mean, it sucks, but it's understandable frustration from Hunter. Like, this was a really good position for him to be in, and, you know, like I was saying, I did genuinely think that this race had the best potential for an upset winner. And if they were able to survive that first corner, I think the rest of the lap would have went a lot cleaner. And I think that both of them, Slonch and Hunter, would have had a very good shot at winning this race. Whereas now they probably have no shot, honestly. I mean, with the way the positions have switched up and with who's in the top spots already, yeah, I don't really think they have a shot at this point. It's just going to be too hard to come back from that on this track unless the leaders start battling like really aggressively with each other, which could happen. Could happen. We've had it happen in other pure terrain races. It's true. But yeah, I mean, their chances went from like, in the 50s to 60% chance of like having a win to probably like 5 or something like that. I mean, and that's just brutal for that to happen so quickly on the first lap. But at the same time, it's also racing, and that's kind of just what happens sometimes. But yeah, looking back on it, I think they could both realize it. And Slonch too was pretty upset about it in terms of like, he was he didn't want to do that. But yeah, looking at the replay, I think everybody could look at that and kind of understand where he's coming from. I don't think that was anything intentional on Slonch's part. It was just really unfortunate. And it's not like it's a gopher in the track either, right? It's not like it was a random bump. Like it's a very visible, clear bump and hazard to avoid. And that's part of the thing with these terrain tracks, right? Like I was saying, like some of them, yeah, to be fair, some of these bumps are kind of random, but some of them are just part of the character, part of the track. And that's one where I'd say it is. Like you can very, very, like this bump on the inside here, like you can very clearly see that bump. But yeah, I mean, first lap, you probably want to have that chance at, oh my God, Slonch, this move. That's, we'll get back to that point in a second, but just watch this. Slonch trying to get by Hunter here, trying to get his regain train going. And I like this move. I like the beginning of this move. The way he sets this up outside to inside, the way he sets this up is very, very nice. I really like the idea here. And unfortunately, again, just like midair, just like lands on Hunter. Just really unfortunate midair contact. Different than the first lap, but kind of similar in a way. And he ends up going down for it. So that's really unfortunate because that was a good move Slonch was lining up there. I really liked the idea there. I think the idea for a solid move was definitely there. And yeah, like I think that could have went really well, but just unfortunately it didn't, and he's gonna have to keep working on that regain. Soul trying to get, I believe that's Detail moving into third there. Soul trying to fight back for it, getting a little too aggressive into the wall, trying to really get that spot back. Soul in a good position. I mean, his first race didn't go that great, but he's in a good position here in race 3. And he ended up getting a very good result for the MX. I mean, that had to be, I'm not even going to double check it, that had to be his best MX result on the season. I don't did he get a podium on Slonch's track? Maybe he was close. Maybe, I think it was close. I think he was 4th. So even if the last lap cheese with Luke didn't happen, I think Soul, even with the 3rd place, would have gotten his best MX result in the season. But 2nd place, for sure, absolutely, was his best result. So that was probably something that you didn't expect going into it. But that was a really, a really huge moment for Soul. I'm sure he's like not, as happy with his season. It's definitely been one of his rougher seasons, but hey, at least he's got that to take away. A 2nd place on an MX, and it was a good race too. Like, yeah, there was that last lap cheese, but Soul was like, yeah, Detail got by him, but Soul didn't lose that much ground on him. He kept it close to him pretty well. So I think he has a lot to be proud of there. It was a legitimate, very, very, very good drive out of him on that 2nd race. But yeah, getting back to it again. The last thing I'll say on it, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. Looking back at it, I think is one of those things, heat of the moment things where I get why people would be frustrated at the time of, but looking back on it, I don't think there's much to be frustrated there other than it's just unfortunate. Because again, I think most drivers in Slonch's position probably would have wound up like ending up in the same position, right? Like I think that would have happened for most people. And what the hell happened to Soul here? We're actually going to roll it back a bit. I have to kind of get it back to where it was here, but we're going to take a look at a replay quick and figure out what happened to Soul here, because this is a big switch up. I was just talking him up and he was in about his last race, and it was a good race, and he was in a good position. But what happened? It wasn't that. That wasn't significant enough. What happened here to move Soul back to last? Because that's a big switch up. He was in 4th here. Look at that. So, and this is a self-error, in my opinion. That's not, like, it's unfortunate that he flipped as bad as he did, but he ran pretty far inside here. Yeah, you can see he ran very, very, very far inside. and it's a dish, it's elevated, and the way that turn is, like, it's a very likely possibility. If you run that a little too inside, you can maybe pick up a little bit of time. You can maybe also flip. And Hunter flips as well. And look at this, double flips. And then, okay, so this is the unfortunate part, right? Again, I do think, and Soul would even probably agree, like, the initial part of the wreck was self-inflicted. I mean, it sucks, but it was a mistake that he made. The recovery is bullshit. The recovery is just complete Halo, just shit that you cannot plan for, just pure bullshit. And we'll get a better look at it here in a moment. First, I wanted to see here what exactly happened to Hunter. And you see there's that bump on entry, and he gets a little bit of that inside bump, and he gets a two-wheel, and that's just kind of like, yeah, not able to catch it. That's pretty normal stuff. Slaunch, very well-timed inside right there. Completely clean. He's going to get a double pass. This is a huge moment in the race for Slaunch. Huge moment for his regain right there. But see, it lets Soul, instead of flipping the hog again to get it really, like, back on four wheels, it lets him get in literally upside down. Like, it's still upside down, and he's on the wrong side as well, and it lets him get back in. I have never seen, I don't think I've ever seen an instance that bad of, like, that type of situation happen. And that is really, really unfortunate. I can see, I'm sure Soul was pretty upset after that one, and that one I think is completely justified. Because again, like, the first part, yes, like, it's a self inflicted error, but hey, those happen, right? Like, that happens. The recovery though, like, it, like, extending his mistake that bad, that's bad luck, right? There's two different instances there. Like, the wreck itself, self-inflicted. The recovery being as bad as it was is bad luck. And yeah, just like the fact that, I mean, he literally, it let him get in on the wrong side. It very clear, like, he was still upside down. It very clearly should have flipped the hog again, but instead it let him get in and just made a bad mistake that much worse, it just completely unnecessarily. So yeah, like, I'm sure Soul was frustrated at that, and I would be too. Because again, like, there's some self-reflection there, right? Like, yeah, he could have not made the mistake, but again, mistakes happen. You're not always, everybody's going to make a fucking mistake at some point. The fact that the recovery was that just BS is just, I mean, yeah, it's Halo stuff. I mean, we've been dealing with it. And yeah, I mean, I really love what we've done with Halo for this long, and I still have a lot of love for the franchise, but shit like that, I mean, yeah, it just is what it is, I guess, is what it is. But anyways, we have a spicy battle here. So Luke's able to develop a pretty decent lead at this point. But meanwhile, and this might be helping the advantage, Detail is putting a lot of pressure on Roman for the second place spot. And it is an important position for Detail. Because, if he can get the second place spot, it's not going to be, I don't think the grand final is necessarily going to be guaranteed. I think it would probably guarantee the regular season championship if it's not already. That I would say, like, I think it'd definitely guarantee that. I don't think it'd quite guarantee his grand final win. That was a close call, but it would make it very, very difficult for the next closest driver, which, oh my god, what does that send? Which I think would be Luke at this point to contest it. So first of all, that was a close call there with, I think, Soul wrecking on the side. And Detail goes for a send here. So I said, like, he wanted this position maybe a little bit too bad. He goes for a very, very rogue send. And that was almost bad. He almost goes completely in the water. So yeah, I like to commend Detail on his moves from time to time. I think he has some really good racecraft. I think he's made some really sick moves. I don't know what was going through his head with that one. I think that one was a little ambitious. But I don't know. I mean, I've done some shit like that too. You gotta let it hang out at some point, right? You gotta let it hang out at some point. That one was, but yeah, that one was that was like a Shaq than a fool moment. But but hey, at least it made for a funny highlight. But yeah, just, I don't know. I think trying to go for a Goomba, but it was not near close enough for that to work. And yeah, not going to happen. It's going to set him back a lot too. Like, he could maybe still get back to Roman and compete for that second place, but look at how much ground he's got to make up now too. Yeah, that really sucks. So Detail may be having to settle for third now. We'll see how the race progresses. But unfortunate, because he does really need that. Well, doesn't need that second place, but that second place would help him greatly. Um, in this battle again, like regular season, I think he's probably with the 2 wins already. Like if it's not locked up, it's got to be like basically locked up. So that's looking fantastic. But for the grand final, there is still a chance for Luke to have a back half comeback, and I say Luke because I think he's in second at this point, leading this race. Like assuming this race finishes the way it does, he would be the next closest contender. The only other person that would maybe be close enough is Roman, but I don't think Roman would be close enough. But he's the next closest. As Camby and Hunter having a really aggressive battle here. But yeah, like it would set it up to have like if Luke wins this moto, if Detail gets third, I think there's genuinely a chance, especially going into the Terrain Oval, that Luke could still take the grand final, right? Whereas if Detail takes second, yes, there's still technically a chance, but it's going to be like, it makes it that much harder, right? At this point, we're 3 races deep. Those 1 point, like they matter. Even if it's just 1 point, like every position is so crucial, especially with the grand final naturally having a smaller field. So yeah, it's very, very important stuff. No, Camby, no. See what happened here. But yeah, so that's kind of the situation there. So Camby, I think Hunter going a little bit wide right here, and Camby sticking to this right side, and then just barely clipping on the barrier. Unfortunate. Get another look at this one. And yeah, I think this one partially is because Hunter loses so much of his time in the water versus before, and that's kind of why that clipping happens. So, unfortunate. That makes sense. That's kind of the best explanation I can get out of that watching it, I guess. But I think we're getting pretty close to the end here. It looks like Detail's actually closed in a bit of that gap on Roman. Yeah, it looks like maybe he will still have a chance at second place. It looks like he's closed up a lot, actually. So he's got good pace here, but I mean that still set him back a ton. Like, maybe he could have had a chance at winning, but definitely not. I don't think he will now, unless something crazy happens again. I mean, I would have said that last race, and then what happens. So you never know. I guess these terrain tracks, that unpredictable factor is always there, right? That chance for cheese, that chance to find a new bump that you maybe haven't found, but like that chance is always there. So. Not over until it's over. Not over until it's over on these tracks, especially. That being said, I think Opix cooked with this one. This actually raced pretty well for a hog terrain, the only hog pure terrain in the season. I think he did a good job remixing this track and making it work for this track type. And yeah, I think he cooked with this one. And talking about those bumps and like gophers being a factor, I mean, this one, in my opinion, it was the least of a factor. Like this one was the most consistent. Yes, you could look at the bump at the start, but that's not a gopher. That's clearly just a part of the track, and it's one of those things where like this happened because of the grand final partially, right? Like if this was the first race of a normal night and we had heat races, that type of factor would have been discovered in the heat races, right? Like we would have figured that out, or even practice, right? If this is a normal night, like few laps practice, like probably would have figured that out in practice. But a lot of the drivers were probably solo practicing, right? Going into these, and it's one of those things that like solo practicing, you're probably not going to think about that as much. Whereas, of course, immediately in the beginning of the first lap, it's like, oh shit, yeah, that bump is quite brutal there. You got to be really careful for it. So it's honestly just kind of an unfortunate placement that this is in the grand final. Like again, if there's heat races, like I think that bump would have been discovered very quickly. Because again, I don't want to call it like a gopher or anything. Because it's not. It's very, very visible. It's a very visible feature of the track. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing in any way. It's just unfortunate that, again, it gets discovered in the first lap and Slaunch couldn't really do much about it. But that's just how shit goes in the grand final. That's part of the craziness of the grand final, and the fact that there's, not the warm-ups and not the heats. Like, shit like that is going to be a factor, and you just can't really, you can't really predict it. You can't really predict it going into this night. Yeah, it's just kind of the part of the way things go, right? Like there's been crazy shit like that in other grand finals before. I know it's not a track feature, but like for example, the classic season, I think it was season 6 one that we pulled up with Slaunch. Luke in detail that crazy wreck. Like, the way that wreck went down, there's not many wrecks like that. And again, I was definitely frustrated at the time, but looking back at it, I don't think it was anybody's fault. Like, it was just hard racing and just really, really, really bad lag. And like, it's unfortunate that potentially, ruined the battle that could have happened between them. That would have been really awesome to witness. But I mean, that's just racing. And that's the way shit goes. And again, like, if there was somebody that did something obviously stupid, I mean, yeah, that would have sucked, but I don't really think that was the case. It just was kind of unfortunate. And I think very similar for what happened with Slosh here. Like, I don't think he did anything dumb. I think he was just trying to regain. Like, he had a really rough start to the night. He really wanted to have a good start. He was in a good position to have a good start and probably take the lead if he could have held that inside. So I think that's what his goal was, and I think that's what he was trying to do. And, just didn't calculate for how rough that bump could be on that line on the first lap, and ended up costing him and ended up hurting Hunter as well, and that's just kind of the way shit goes. So yeah, basically the whole point of that though is just, yeah, again, saying like, I don't think any of these tracks had any clear like gophers or shitty sections like that, and I wouldn't put that bump say that about that bump either. Like, I think it's a totally fine part of the track, and again, if we raced this again, that start would go completely different. You wouldn't. It's not like I wouldn't make a change to it. I wouldn't patch it up. Like, it would go completely different with the drivers being aware of it. They would approach it a lot safer, and it'd play out completely different. So it's kind of the way it goes. But anyways, we're on the last lap, and Roman, to his credit, closed it in quite a bit. The top three was closing in quite a bit at the end, but to be fair, there was room to work with, and Luke's going to take the win for race number 3. Roman second, and Detail third. Very close though. Very close. Yeah, after the first race being, not too much of a contest, the podiums have been very competitive, and Slosh with a really good comeback there too. He wasn't that far off for how rough his start was. And then Hunter running up the top 5, Camby 6th, and Soul. I forgot to mention in the beginning, iPod called it a night after race 2. He was pissed with this finish, but there you go. There you have it for race number 3, going into the final one. We'll see you guys there for Viridian.